Welcome to the Publish Her podcast, a place where you can come to get inspiration, motivation, help, encouragement, and support in your journey to write, publish, and sell your book. Hosted by Alexa Bigwharf.
'Cause I've been where you've been, and I felt what you're feeling, and I don't want to get in your way.
All right, welcome everybody to another Publish Her podcast. Today I am interviewing Ellie Hall, who is a USA Today bestselling author. If only that meant she could wear a tiara and get away with it. She loves puppies, books, and the ocean. Writing sweet romance with lots of firsts and fizzy feels gives her joy. Oh, and chocolate chip cookies are her fave. Ellie believes in dreaming big, working hard, and lazy Sunday afternoons spent with her family and dog in gratitude for God's grace. So thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you about your success and what you're doing, all of those things.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm happy to be here too and excited to answer and help in any way that I can.
Well, we have a lot of authors that listen to this who write in a multitude of genres. Your area of expertise is sweet romance, and I know that's been a really big and growing category. I follow several authors who are just really killing it in that area. You've achieved USA Today bestseller status. So I guess the first question is, are you self-published or hybrid published, traditionally published? How are you published?
I am self-published since 2018. So
Wow.
Yeah, I've been riding the indie wave for just 5 years now. So yeah, so it's been quite a learning curve.
I bet. Did you achieve USA bestselling as an indie author or through a publisher?
I did. Yep. And it was actually with several other authors, and I collaborated, and I was kind of at the helm, I guess you could say. But we put out a sweet rom-com box set, so a collection of books.
Wow.
And we hit the list. And I actually just heard recently that the list is no longer a list. There's some murmurings going on, but it was wonderful. It was really nice to work with other people and kind of have that collaborative. But in much the same way in like traditional publishing, you would have a collaborative team of people working with you. It was really nice to be able to. We each wrote our own stories, but it was really nice to be able to work together creatively and bounce ideas off of each other and edit each other and do all those things. So I felt like I learned a lot, but it was a long haul. It was a lot of work to achieve that goal that I had, but we did it, and it felt really good. And it feels nice to have like a little affirmation from the book reading community and those letters. So, but it doesn't mean everything. So even if you're not a USA,
I mean, that's an excellent point. And a couple of things here. I did read that they had fired their CEO or the person in charge of the list or something. I know my hope is that it will come back because, obviously lists like that are important for a lot of different reasons, but it is interesting. So I also achieved USA Today bestselling status, and it was also through a collaborative effort. And I think that's a really important thing for indie authors to know and understand how important, when you are growing your own audience, how important coming together with other people who can expand that reach, because you have to have so many sales to even hit those lists, that this is absolutely an excellent way to try and do that. So congratulations to you and your fellow authors. I know how many sales that represents. So that's awesome. Well, talk to me a little bit then about why I have so many questions for you, Ellie. Okay, so for everyone to know, how I connected with Ellie is I started following, as I'm writing rom-com right now, I started following other authors. I'm not even sure how I found you. I may have found you from following another author and seeing you. I may have found you in an author follow loop or something like that on Instagram. But all of these things speak to how important it is to engage and see who's out there and doing things, follow other people, see what they're doing as an author. But one of the things that has impressed me so much is your speed of publication. I feel like every time I turn around, you're launching another book. So I think I want to start with, how in the heck do you write so fast? How do you set up your timeline and your production schedule?
Well, I'm going to start with the little caveat that I'm like this close. And if you can't see, if you're listening, I'm pinching my fingers together. I'm like that close to burnout. So
Uh-huh.
back in 2018, I started, I kind of jumped on the rapid release bandwagon,
Mhm.
and I was kind of given the information like, yeah, you just want to get your books out there, and they were shorter. So I should also say that like the first several series that I wrote, and authors, we measure in word count, not necessarily pages. Like I have no idea how many pages my books are. I know how many words are in them. But so especially with the, ebook format, like you don't really have, you have pages, but it's not the same as in a paperback.
Right.
But so my books were on the shorter side, probably like upwards of 50,000 words. So
Okay.
that was kind of number one. I was writing shorter, more like novella length books. And they were in standalone series. So they were like, a shared location or a shared event or something like that. And so I wanted to I was writing these like almost like episodic, like a Netflix series that you could binge, but following like the lives of the different characters and couples, since it is sweet romance. So I kind of started there with that rapid release model, and I almost like worked myself into a corner. I was like, well, this is what I'm doing now.
Right.
And like, there's no stopping me. And at the time I had 2 children and they were going to school, they'd be gone at 8 or so and then be back, 3 or 5, and they'd doing activities and sports. So I had these like nice chunks of time where I could just laser focus, and I call it my writing cave. Like I go into the writing cave and I turn off all disturbances, distractions, don't answer the phone. And I just write my little heart out. And then, everything that changed in the world brought the kids home. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I can hardly keep up this pace. And I don't really think that it's necessarily realistic, but I've kind of made like an unspoken commitment with my readers, like the 15th of every month, April 15th, we're getting taxes, but you're getting a book.
Oh my gosh. Every month you did that for how long?
Since the end of 2018.
Holy smokes.
I know. And so sometimes though, I would put out a box set, or I would do like I've had books that have been in a collection or something, and I've repurposed those. So, or I'll write like a short Christmas novella or something like that. So over the years, I've kind of made it doable. But I also, for whatever reason, I can get my butt in the chair and I can write, 8,000 words at a time. And if you are writing a 40, 50,000 paid word book, that's like a week or so, that's doable in a month. And I will also say that I am not a pantser. I am a plotter. So I will spend one day and I'll plot a whole book. And the outline might be, I don't know, like 10,000 words. Like I write chapter to chapter to chapter, everything that's going to happen. I hit all my, my romance beats, make sure there's the, the reasons why they can't be together. And then there's the, the things that keep them apart. And I just try and make sure that all that is in there as a template. And then I just hit the ground running. Lately, I feel like I've been more like, I went down to a jog, and now it's kind of like I'm just sort of dragging myself along. But I really do enjoy it. And that's a big part of what I do. And now I'll just sort of say though, in the last 5 years, and you've probably seen this too, is that with such, and I appreciate it so much, like the time spent on social media and connecting with readers, but there's also for all the authors out there, we know how much behind the scenes happens. So it's like a matter of balancing the actual writing and the editing and the revising and that whole thing. And then like social media where you're connecting with readers, and that's always so fun, and doing things like this. And then there's like the slog, or at least I think it's the slog of like having a spreadsheet and tracking all of these like different promotions and, different things that you have to basically, participate in if you want to get the word out there. So I feel like that piece in particular has kind of taken its toll on me the most. With like, okay, like I can write all day, every day. Like that hasn't gotten old. That hasn't got like really exhausted me so much, but it's that other, like I call it the admin, like administrative work. I would love it. I'm like, I need an assistant, but I'm also like a little bit of a control freak, not a control freak, but like, I just like, I want to know what's going on at all times. I've been like begging my husband, like, do you want to, do some of this for me? And he's like, he's like, I can barely hunt and peck at the computer. Like, no way. And my kids are grown up, they've moved out. So I, any help that I had that like I could kind of watch over their shoulder is, gone now. So, but yeah, that's kind of like, I would say sort of the secret sauce for me has been like nice blocks, chunks of time where uninterrupted. And then, and having those outlines really like dialed in. And, that's not for everybody. Some people, and I will also say though, I have my outline, and then if like a character is taking me in another direction, I listen and I follow.
Yeah.
I'm not like,
Yeah.
no, you're doing this, but
Yeah.
but that really helps. And I also like a little goal oriented, like, all right, today I'm going to write these 4 chapters. Tomorrow I'm going to write the next 4. But then the last thing I'll say, and I'm like long-winded, is that I've gotten long-winded in my books. And so what started out as like a 30, 40, maybe 50,000 word book, now the one I just finished was 90,000 words, which
Wow.
for a romance is like a little bit on the longer side.
Right.
Just kind of following those conventions. So yeah, so now I'm like, okay, I think in 2024, we're going to slow things down a little bit.
Well,
so
oh goodness, like I said, so many questions. So I want to talk a little bit about the reader base, because we've talked in different programs that we offer in the Women in Publishing Summit and things like that about writing to market, growing your readers, all of those types of things. When you started writing, did you start writing sweet romance because that was on your heart and that's what you really wanted? Or did you go about it from a goal-oriented way and say, I could write this genre and I see that it's starting to grow and, all of those types of things?
Yeah, so I kind of fell in backwards, I guess. I love Hallmark movies. Like I'll be, I love reading sweet romance, and I'll be sitting there and I'll have this big grin on my face. And my husband's like, what are you smiling about? I'm like, oh, it's just this cute scene. Like I gush over like the cheesier, the better, the more unlikely, like, oh, they bump into each other and they instantly fall in love. Like I'm a romantic at heart, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's just the way I was built. And so, I kind of came across a group online and of romance writers, and that's kind of the direction they were going in. And I'm like, wait, like I could do this. I think I love it so much. Like I could kind of be like the behind the scenes. Like I could, like, I don't have to just consume it as a reader. I could write it. And so, cause I'd been writing for a long time, and all kinds of, I didn't like really understand, back then, like kind of the writing to market. And I did learn about that and kind of jumped in, not early on, but early enough that kind of I found my way, into a really growing reader base. So that I think that was more luck than anything else. But yeah, so it was kind of one of those things where I was just like, oh, like,
yes.
Little,
so
yeah.
On that note, so you mentioned ebooks. Do you do print books too, or just ebooks?
I do print books. Yep. So paperbacks. I did Amazon. I think they still do offer the hardcover. And it's kind of glossy. I'm not a huge fan. I like as a reader, like my number one goal is to make sure my readers are happy. So I had bought some of those hardcovers for myself, like no offense, Amazon, but they were just like a little cumbersome. Like they didn't open very nicely. Like, so I kind of skipped that. I have not ventured into Ingram Sparkland where you can have these beautiful books made. I know Book Vault. I just listened to a podcast yesterday. Book Vault is making beautiful books, and you can have like ribbons in them and like different covers. And I'm like, oh, like the reader in me loves, I just love that so much. But we stick to basics over here for now. Ebook and then paperbacks, just to kind of keep things, available and, in different, couple different formats. I have made, large print for a couple series. And I heard libraries especially like to have those available. And I hadn't really seen that much of a return on it. It was worth doing, but I know on an ebook you can enlarge the print. So
so I assume you're exclusively through KDP, through Amazon and on KDP Select and all of those types of things.
I am. I'm about 3/4 exclusive. So let's see, maybe 3 years ago I started moving a couple series wide, and then I kind of paused. And now kind of, hearing, keep my ear to the ground a little bit, like, oh, having a direct sales store on your website is a good idea, different things. So they're seeing, changes in publishing and stuff. So I have one complete series wide. And then I also have a fantasy and paranormal romance pen name.
Oh.
And it's Ellie Hall, which is, I know, very, very creative. And I have 3 complete series. It's like, fairy, fae, and magical stuff. And I have those series wide. So
yeah.
So I'm a little bit of both.
We get asked the question a lot, whether or not a pen name is in play. And I think, so these 2 questions kind of go together here. The importance of your reader base and knowing what they want as sweet romance, and that's going to be what they expect from Ellie Hall. And that you're going into a whole different reader base when you're on the fairies and fae and all of that kind of stuff. And why I believe it is important to separate those so that you don't lose readers if you start popping in new books that aren't what they expect.
Yes. It's such a, I think the way publishing has grown, especially indie publishing. Yeah. So I think it's really important to keep, to meet reader expectations and not kind of muddy the waters with different genres. However, there are people who do find success in that. They'll write a romance and then they'll toss in a paranormal romance and then maybe some mystery. And it works for them. I think it almost, it more goes with what your author brand is. So I branded heavily as sweet romance. Yeah. And that's what you're going to get when you get Ellie Hall. But then E Hall is like, more on the fantasy side. And that was more of, I think too, kind of going back to what I was saying, like it works for some authors to kind of dabble in this, dabble in that. And, there are the books of your heart, or there are like kind of the direction you want to go. And sometimes you do have to ask yourself, well, do I want to do this just to sort of, not so much to get it out of my system, but to satisfy that itch? Or do I want to just kind of stick with what I've started and not veer from that? And so I was like, what, like I do want to be writing a little bit of fantasy, because I went through like a period of time where I was really enjoying that. And I was like, I'm gonna scratch the itch. I'm gonna pursue that, but I will do it under a pen name, keep things separate. It didn't really go anywhere. I think some people may have enjoyed it, but it wasn't like, this, selling, thousands of copies or anything. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And sometimes it's like, that's what matters. You know what I mean? So sometimes you do want to follow the, where the money is. And then other times it's like, well, I want to do this fun side project.
Well, you've invested a lot of time and energy building an audience of readers who expect a certain type of book. So it makes sense that, and then when you go into a different direction, you've got to basically start from scratch and finding those readers. On your sweet side, are you mostly getting readers because they find you through Kindle Unlimited, or have you been growing your email list? Have you been doing other things too? I know you're very active on social media and growing that platform. How would you, if you were speaking to an author who's just starting in this and getting, trying to build well, any kind of genre, but obviously we're speaking specifically to sweet romance. Like, what are some of the things that you've done to make sure that you have readers and growing amounts of readers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I ask myself often. So I think a lot of readers do come in from Kindle Unlimited. And I guess I'll sort of actually officially start answering this question by saying, much like if you have, investment portfolio, you want to have a diverse, kind of a diverse streams. And when you're starting out, it can be overwhelming. Like, there's social media, there's newsletter swaps, there's like all these things that, kind of come at you. And it's like, where do I even start? And I would say probably start with the thing that you most enjoy. So if you love social media, if that's kind of, you enjoy engaging with people in that way, kind of go in that direction. Or if like writing a little newsletter blurb and setting that up each week or each month is, kind of exciting, and it feels like a good investment of your time. Like you feel like a little surge of a reward when you're click send, kind of go in that direction. But yeah, so I would say, like in the very beginning, focus on what gives you, kind of, to borrow from Marie Kondo and the simplification of your home, like do what brings you joy. you know, make sure you're seeing a response and a return, because sometimes if it's crickets, well, maybe that isn't the best use of time. But, you know, if you start to get engagement, and it's probably going to be slow at first, you know, that's the case for everybody, but just being patient, persistent, consistent,
Yeah.
can really kind of bring you where you want to go. And so the other thing I was going to say was, you know, over time, like, you know, if you kind of imagine it like a marathon, like, you know, you hit that first mile, you've got your social media, like, online, it's going well. And then you're like, all right, you know what? I want to direct all these people to a newsletter. Then you layer that in. And then it might be, you know, doing promotions with other authors and collaborating a little bit, and you layer that in and just kind of fold it in slowly over time. Because that's the hard thing, is like, there's only so much time in each day. And I've learned that lesson repeatedly.
Absolutely.
I want to jump in and do all the things. I actually, after, you know, years and years, I finally joined TikTok the day before yesterday. And, you know, I'm like, do I really want to add another thing to my list of what I do each day? And I was like, well, I'm going to, and this was, I'm saying this because I kind of gave myself like a framework. I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself 30 days. I'm going to post twice a day. I'm going to engage. I'm going to do the things, you know, they say to do to build your TikTok, and I'm going to see how it goes. And that's kind of how I approach most of the things. It's like, I give it a time limit. I kind of make a goal for myself, and I stick with that for whatever just period of time I decide to do it. And then if I'm not seeing growth, or if I'm not seeing a response, or if it's just not working for whatever reason, it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to press pause on that and move on to the next thing, or not, or, you know, go walk my dog.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've talked, you know, about the fact that you are writing to market, which is very, very smart. You know, some people turn up their nose at that and say, well, I'm not writing, but in your case, you're absolutely writing what you love. And I think that's the important part when you write to market, is writing something you love. We've talked about, you know, you building your email list and your followers through all of these types of things, which is so critical. But I know a question that a lot of our audience wants to know the answer to, myself included, having just released my first rom-com in December, is, are you making a full-time living as an author? That's part one. And part two, how long did it take you to get there? As in, like, is there a certain number, was there a certain point, a certain book number, like book 3, book 4, book 5, or has it just kind of grown as you've continued to release books?
Absolutely. So yes, I am making a full-time living as an author, but that is per what my cost of living is. So, so as I mentioned, I have 2 children, but I guess I still call them children. They're adults. They don't live at home anymore. They're far, far away. Actually, one is currently on the other side of the world.
Wow.
So yeah, so she's traveling. So, you know, my expenses compared to what they were at a different, you know, stage of my life are much different. You know, I'm not paying for extracurricular activities and new clothes all the time. Of course, you know, we still spoil them a little bit, but it's not, you know, it's not the same. We're empty nesters now. So everything kind of scaled back. So yes, I'm making, you know, what I would consider a living that meets our families. My husband works as well, but my income is enough to sustain us, but we don't have a high cost of living because our kids are moved out.
Right.
And the truth is, kids are expensive.
They are very expensive. I have 3
Yes.
and they are younger than yours, so I will be working for a long time. So I want to figure out at what point my books can
Yes.
sustain my life so that I
Yes.
can focus on that.
And we love them, and we are happy to work that hard for them.
Yes,
But
exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of a little you know, something to take into consideration. And I'm noticing a theme in what I'm saying, like with my outlines, with like setting goals in terms of creating or starting a new you know, whether it's social media activity or, you know, whatever. And I would say, you know, we created a budget, like what we need in order to, you know, our baseline amount that we need each month or each year, depending on what we're looking at. And I'm not a numbers person at all. Like really, 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 I know a lot of people say that, but I'm actually not. Like, give me all the words, I'm good. Okay with commas, not great. But like when it comes to spreadsheets and like all that stuff, I start to like glaze over and get lost. And I'm fine to admit that. It's just the truth. I try to learn. I try and, I have my ads and I try and like track everything. And at some point I'm just like, I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. And I kind of get lost. But so I would say probably it was around the time shortly after we hit the USA Today bestselling list, I did see a nice spike. And I was like, oh, this is good. Like the books that are selling. And at that point, I think I had 5 or 6 series, and my series are between 5 and 6 books each. So
oh Lord, you just crushed my soul.
I'm
so you
sorry.
had 5 or 6 series at 5.
Yeah.
So you're at the 30 book point.
Yeah. And I saw, so I'm going to tell you this, and it might make you feel a little bit better. I don't know.
Okay.
But so I saw a nice spike. We'll just say that. I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. Wow. Okay.
And now we know the benefit of those lists.
Yes. And that went on for, a couple months or a few months. And I was like, well, this is great. I could get used to this. And then, I saw like an increase up the hill. And then I saw a decrease. Okay. And I don't know if it was, and I still don't know. I've looked at ads. I've looked at the things that I was doing differently. But I saw that nice increase. And then I saw it like kind of go back to what I would call like my normal sustained income. And I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways that I could give anybody. And this might not be true for all authors, but I've seen it several times, with my pen names and different things, like, and I've talked to other authors about it. Like you'll start to think like, oh, okay, I'm making this amount of money now, and I'm going to make this amount of money forever. Yay. Here we go. And then it like something changes, whether it's the market, whether it's the wind, who knows, whether it's some, whatever, something, with your readers, or like Amazon changes something and your books aren't being seen the same way they were. I don't know. But I did see a tapering off starting last year at this time. And I was like, oh boy, okay, like, what do I do? And I think it's important for authors to know, and this is a hard truth and not something we want to hear, but it can be very variable. And there are, I have author friends that are just, they are crushing it, and I'm so happy for them. But I've seen like a lot of wavy gravy going on, and I'm thankful for every book sold and every page read, and it's wonderful. Like I'm so grateful for that abundance it provides my family. But I've noticed fluctuations. And so what we were talking about before, and having, some books wide, some books exclusive, I think it's important to have that diversity. If you can make your books into audiobooks, or if you can, kind of find like, I was like, well, I'm going to put my books in large print. Like it's just a matter of an additional format,
right?
Change the cover a little bit. And like, so having, using my intellectual property as widely as I can, like whatever's written, I try and like wring all the juice out of it that I can.
Sure.
And so in terms of making, a solid income, like, yes, it's there for sure. But I think please forgive me, I forget your second question, but I was going to just say having a pretty healthy backlist. Yeah. And by healthy, I mean abundant, a lot of books, I do think helps as well. But, I've been in and out of the publishing world since 2011, and you just never know what book is going to strike readers, strike the market. Lightning, you catch that lightning in a bottle, you just never know. And so I always want to encourage authors and you to just like keep at it, because your book might be the one. And it really, there's nothing saying that it can't. And so as long as your formatting is good and you have a nice cover and the story is compelling, it could just be that thing that readers like, they just are hungry for, and it just takes off. So, and it just takes one book, we've seen that time and time again. So sometimes
there's a strike of luck, but that luck strike often comes after years of really hard work. Yeah. And I think that's what we see, I guess. Well, so my second question was really how many books that you thought you needed. So obviously you had the USA Today bestseller list, which really, made that lovely additional, but would you, and again, what people need to earn is completely variable, but would you say that you saw enough sales maybe after your first series or after your second series that you were making a reasonable income, maybe not one that could have provided for your entire family, but was enough for you to maybe, I don't know, take a trip or pay for hockey?
Oh yeah.
Or,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So back then, let's see, I started my first series, that was in 2018 and 2019. And oh, you know what? I did something kind of funny. So my first series and my second series, I had two ideas. One was, billionaire romance, and one was like these rough mountain guy romances. And I would release one book from one series and then the first book from the next series. And I was kind of like switching between the two.
Which you can do when you're releasing one book every single month.
I know.
I don't even want to tell you how long it took me to do my first book in entirety was 10 years. I mean, it went through variations and changes and life happened and all these kinds of things, but I'm like, holy smokes, how do I even increase to like 2 books in 1 year, let alone
Well,
I'm sorry, that was totally different. Let's get back to the question.
No, but what I didn't mention was that I also had some of those. I had books that, I was just writing for fun. Like I don't know why it didn't occur to me like, oh, I could actually do this. Like I really only understood the traditional publishing route.
Right.
And I had a few books that I did query, back in like 2012. And yeah, so I didn't really get into the self-publishing until later. So I completely understand where you're coming from, but I really do think that those, a book that takes you 10 years, like you learn so much.
You do.
There's a quote that's like, it takes 10,000 hours of doing something to, to kind of become like proficient at it. And like, that's during those 10 years, that's what you're doing, you're like,
I did step away from that book for about 6 of those years. So I guess in full time, it was probably about 3 years hardcore, but lots of reasons behind that. But let's go back to, so you're releasing these 2 series, one each month. And how did that work out?
So I don't know. It was just kind of a weird thing that I did. But so by the end of that first year though, so by the end of 2019, I had 2 series out. And I don't know, it was like just like kind of a mental trick to like kind of be switching between the 2, or like if readers liked one, I was kind of hedging my bets. And if they didn't like the other kind of thing, it's like, well, I don't know if they want billionaires or if they want rugged mountain men, but they're going to get both, not at the same time. And if they like this series, they can continue there, or in between they'll have another series that they can start between the release of the book. So anyway, so after that first year, I was making kind of what I would call kind of like money for discretionary spending, like extra, not above what I needed for my, my baseline, family budget, but like, oh, okay. So, one of my kids needs a new pair of dance shoes, or, we need a new set of tires. Like there was a little bit of extra money there for those things. And then by the second year or so, I was like, oh, okay. Like if I had a very low budgetary need to sustain my family, like we could get by.
Okay.
And then probably
that's much more encouraging.
Yeah. And probably by the third year, and again, like it's hard to say without like specific numbers, like some, I know families, like their monthly budget's $10,000.
Right.
And that's not mine.
Right.
So, everybody's different. It's relative, but by into the third year, I was like, okay, this is like, if you have a modest lifestyle and you're not taking trips and cruises and, all kinds of things all the time, like this is doable. And then once shortly after the list, I think, there's no way to know, but maybe readers were going into my backlist catalog, or, I was continuing to release. And that's when I saw that nice increase. And now we've kind of plateaued at like, it's a modest but comfortable income to pay the bills. And again, there's been so many changes in publishing and in the world. It's hard, so hard to gauge. Like people scaled back on their on their spending and, kind of buckled down for a little while. But then there was a period of time where everybody was reading all day, every day. So
Right.
like,
And my guess is that's more why your book sales slowed down, is because about a
yeah,
year ago was when everything started opening up
yeah,
again
yeah.
fully. So people are like, I want to get out and into the world. I've
Yes.
read 700 books in the last 2
Yeah.
years. I'm ready to go live life again.
The TBR, there's no more TBR. It's gone.
Right, exactly. What there will be no reading until I've seen
Yeah.
every concert I wanted to see in the past 2 years. And yeah, no, totally. But I do want to, we've talked a little bit about this. This is an important question to me because it's something I talk to our authors about a lot. And that is the importance of growing the email list. So every opportunity I get to ask an author this, I pick their brain on this question. And you've mentioned that you've done newsletter swaps, promo swaps, that you've have a newsletter and things like that. How much does this factor into what you're doing, this email growth? Are you building a reasonable email list? And do you see, when you send out a promo or a discounted price on one of your books or a new launch release, do you see the amount of sales from that leads you to believe, yes, this is worth my time and effort, or no, it's not? Sorry, that's 3 questions. I hope you can remember all of those.
Yes, and yes. The answer off the top is yes. So I started right away, and I think I may have like come across, may have been a podcast, or I forget. I came across something very, very, very early on, thank goodness, that said like, build your email list. Your email list is something that you ostensibly own. It is yours. It is not, to the whims of whatever social media is going to do or whatever is going to happen. And so I started building it right away. I started with a reader magnet. So it was like a novelette length short story. It's free for anybody that signs up for my list. And so I started growing that way, and I would have news, and this is very popular in romance. And I don't even know if actually, I don't think it's specific to romance, but it probably crosses different genres. But kind of being a part of these newsletter builders with targeted romance readers that want to, kind of get onto your list and see what you've got going on. Excuse me. So I started with that right away. And I kind of jumped into whatever I could that was specific to my genre. So any kind of sweet romance thing I could do. And then I started with the newsletter swaps, and that was very helpful. And it started to grow from there. I always make sure I put things inside of my books that say, please subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get this free book. And one of the other things I started doing more recently was I would write like bonus material specific to that book that you could get if you subscribe to my newsletter. And I really built it out from there. And I say there are 3 indispensable things that are part of my writing business. One of them is my newsletter. I use MailerLite. I've been really happy with them. I've switched to it. I've tried a few different ones. They have a great customer service. One is Canva. That's for just making graphics and things for my newsletter or for whatever social media. And then the other is Vellum, which is what I format my books on. And so like, I don't know if you're going to ask any of those things, but those are like the 3 things. So my newsletter is like right up there, top 3. And I ask readers about their lives, and they respond. And I like to actually, my newsletter goes out on Wednesday. So today, yesterday was National Pet Day, but that doesn't matter. I sent out something today for like National Pet Day was yesterday. Talk to me about your pets. And, I get replies, and I answer every one of them personally. I give like a personal reply, and try and like cultivate those relationships, because the readers are, they're my top 3 for my business as an author, but like the readers are really like what matters. So, so the newsletter is like key, and I actually really enjoy it. I know some people don't. And one of the things that I do that I will share is I batch. So I will make like the month. I send every Wednesday. Don't ever feel pressure to do that. It's just what I do. You might send every month. For Ellie Hall, for my pen name, I never really send one. Like I was sending I was sending one once a month, and I scaled back to like seasonally, and now I haven't done it in a while. But I'll do like the whole month. And then if I have something going on, I'll just replace the content. Like if there's like a special, a special event or something happening that I want to have sort of in the forefront, I'll just, swap it out for something else. But so newsletter, super important, love it. And I think having that kind of ability to contact readers directly, whether it's asking about their pets or like,
Mhm.
hey, I have a sale going on today, check it out. And they're always so happy to, you know, find out about that directly and not be like, oh,
Yeah.
you posted it on social media, but I didn't get it in my feed until 2 days later.
Thank you. That's one of the big things about that, if they ever see it at all. But I'm glad you
Yeah.
shared that the importance of that newsletter, and you resounding yes to, you see sales when you send out those promos and things like that. And I'm glad you shared some of the things that you send in your newsletter, because a lot of people get so wrapped up in, oh my gosh, what am I gonna, I mean, thank you. That it can be as easy as asking them about their pet, or like, because people want to feel like there is an actual relationship, and
Yeah.
just asking those or sharing those tidbits or doing whatever, so that when they do get a newsletter from you, it's not always just, oh, buy my book, buy my book, buy my
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
But the other question that I wanted to ask you about, and one that we get a lot, and I haven't learned this route on my own yet, because I just did my first book and I didn't have the time to go in and do a lot of these things that I would advise other authors to do. But the question I get often is, how do we find the right people to do newsletter swaps with, especially if you're brand new and you have 5 subscribers on your email? How are you going to find the right people who are willing to give you a shot, who are willing to participate, or, you know, or
Yeah.
even to make those connections?
I remember asking myself that exact question a few years ago. And so what I did was, first, I just like my specific route, like I'm giving you like the actual itinerary, was I joined
Uh-huh.
bookfunnel.com, which was a service. And then,
Yes, we're big
it
fans of
worked.
BookFunnel.
Yeah. And it's great because they have a lot of sweet romance authors on there. So I started setting up newsletter builders, and I got to, a certain number. I actually don't remember what it was, but we'll just say I got, 500 or 300 subscribers. And again, I don't know if this is true across genre, but there's a big romance author population on Facebook. And I found a couple groups where newsletter swap, I just did the simple, like, sweet romance newsletter swap. And I found some groups, I
There you
joined
go.
them, followed their rules, met some other authors, and it took off from there. And always it was transparent. Like, I'm just starting out building. And I mean, the author community I've found is just so lovely and supportive and wonderful, and wants to like lift each other up. And everybody was gracious. And, and I hope I've done the same thing, like someone's like, oh, this is my first book, would you mind putting it, in your newsletter? I'll swap with you, even though I'm just starting out. And it's like, well, yeah, because you don't know who their newsletter subscribers are. It might be a whole new group of people. And so,
Right.
yeah. So, and actually it brings to mind, I have a reader she's like the sweetest. And she has 2 other authors that she really loves, and and me. And she's like, well, I just started my mother-in-law out. I got her a Kindle, and I got her a bunch of books, and I put yours on there and stuff.
Oh,
And it's like, her mother-in-law, I don't know if she enjoys my books or not, but like, that's a brand new reader, and it's
yeah.
like, it's just building one person at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can that can, over time, that makes a difference, actually. So it's
Well,
like, you
and
want
when
to
you
think about your long game.
right, and when you think about the multiplying factor of your reader,
Yes.
who's now put it on her mother-in-law's Kindle, she may not have told you, but she's probably told all of her friends about your books, if she loves you so much that she's, buying the books for her mother-in-law. So that's really cool. And
Yeah.
it does show how you can multiply the effect just by one reader who
Mhm.
really loves you, letting them do their thing. This last question really has nothing to do with your what you've been doing or your tactics. And thank you so much, by the way, for sharing all of that information. This has been so useful. But I want to ask a question about the genre specific,
Mhm.
because there are so many people that can get confused, myself included, sometimes on the difference between sweet, clean, Like, how would you, how do you wrap sweet into it? Like, is it all closed door? Is that necessary? Is it all clean, as in no cursing? I've heard some people say in sweet, there can be some cursing, there can be some allusion. I mean, you can talk about alcohol and some things like that.
Yeah.
Clean is the one where you stay away from anything naughty. How do you think sweet falls in that genre
Yeah.
area?
So when I started out, I kind of linked arms with several other authors, and it was the clean genre. And over time, like, that became like pun unintended. I don't, it became a hot button topic.
Right.
Like, what does clean mean? What does spicy mean? Like all these words. And so it kind of, for me, it came back to on Amazon, which is where I was exclusively publishing at a time, they had a category called clean and wholesome. And
Okay.
I took that to mean like, it's basically coming back to a Hallmark movie.
Right.
Like
Clothes
there,
always stay on and nobody's doing
yes,
anything naughty.
exactly. And that's where I built my reader base, and that's
Uh-huh.
where I've stayed. And
Okay.
so, so I sort of started there, I remained there, and I branded myself though as sweet and swoony, like
Okay.
meaning more like the female characters are very sweet and the male characters are very swoony.
Mm.
And then, you know, on the internets, it became like, well, sweet means this, and sweet means it becomes like a whole like snarl of confusion for people.
Mhm.
And so when you're coming to me, you are going to get that clean and wholesome. There aren't swears. There isn't, you know, everything is closed door, and you're not going to find too many, you know, I guess this is relative, but there aren't too many situations that are like it's more like a Hallmark movie.
Right.
Like I
Right.
said, like
Right.
it's not, there's not going to be too many emotions involved. There's always a
Right.
happily ever after.
Right.
It's not a roller coaster. It's more of just like the, what's that ride where it's like the kiddie coaster.
A couple ups and downs, but nothing
Yeah,
that you're like.
exactly. So yeah, so I personally cannot define what all of that means, because I don't know if anybody can. There are a few like little guides online that I've come across or on social media, like this is what sweet means, this is what closed door means, this is what spicy means, and it's kind of on a spectrum. I honestly don't know.
Well, and the
um,
reason that I asked you this, it goes back to the question on newsletter swaps, because I think when you are
yes,
finding the right authors to partner with for those types of things, it's really important to know and understand this. And
yes,
I follow another author who writes completely clean, and we've been friends for a long time. And when I went to launch my book, and she was very honest with me, she was like, you know, I need to know if I'm going to promote your book in front of my audience, I need to know that there's no curse words, no dirty, like hot scenes, even if it is closed door, like it can't go past, you know, like
yes,
a certain point. There can't be any
yes.
drinking, there can't be any smoking. And I was like, okay, you can definitely not promote my book.
So yeah, yeah.
But everything is closed to door. So by some of the rules out there, like mine falls in sweet because
Yeah.
there's no sex on the page.
Right.
But
And
there's a whole lot of other naughty things
yes.
happening.
And it's, you know, it's also just life, you know, but I
Right.
think it comes back to like meeting the reader expectations. So
Exactly.
my readers, you know, they expect that Hallmark framework.
Yes. Yes.
And there have been times where like I've joined a newsletter, not a newsletter swap, a book promotion, like a group promotion.
Mhm.
And I'll look at the, you know, the other books involved, and I'm like, well, I'm not entirely sure where they fall. And I'll just make a
Mhm.
little note, like, you know, my book is, you know, fits these criteria. I'm not sure about the other books, but view them at your own discretion if that's a
Mhm.
concern of yours, type of thing. Because on the one hand, you know, I want to make sure my reader base is happy, but I can't
Yeah.
police every single book
Right.
or read every
Right.
single book. So in terms of like doing newsletter swaps, a lot of times, hopefully, like authors that are in a sweet or a clean and wholesome or whatever group, if they have a cuss word or something in their book, they'll just disclose it. And
Yeah.
90% of the time, the other authors are like, well, thanks for doing that, and
Yeah.
they'll include it with like a little disclaimer.
Right.
A lot of people skim that stuff if it's not for them.
Right.
But it's also, it is really meeting those genre reader expectations and making sure you're keeping them happy. And there's plenty of there's like so many fish in the sea. There's so many
Right.
books on the shelves, and there's
Right.
something for everybody.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it can be hard on the author end to kind of
Yeah.
navigate that with all the different definitions, and gosh, yeah.
And just and oh my goodness, we've been talking almost an hour, so I will wrap this up for
Okay.
everyone's sake. But I think the final thing to say about that is that when you are considering how you write your book, that's why writing to market, or at least having a very clear understanding of what the expectations of your genre are matters so much, because if you write something that's somewhere in the middle like mine is, then you have to be able to figure out where it can go and where it can't go, and those types of
Yes.
things. Whereas if you follow it to a T, then you can fit right in that genre without
Yeah.
any issue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it kind
well,
of, oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to ask you how long you think you're going to be able to keep up this one book a month, and what your next thing is, and then where people can find you.
Oh, so as of in September, or I'll say at the end of this year, I'm going to be starting, and I made this promise to myself and to my family. I'm going to be releasing a book every other month for 2024.
Yay, good for you. Good for
Yes,
you.
and I'll probably, a few of those might be box sets, collections or something like that as well, just to kind of ease off. We moved, and I haven't unpacked all my boxes yet, and it's been 3 months, so nothing's on the walls except for what you see behind me. So I have some things I need to do around the house. But yeah, I have the rest of this year planned out, and then after that, gonna take my foot off the gas a little bit. I'll still be around, but not every single month, because it's a lot, and I think you can only sustain that for so long
Yes,
without.
I would agree.
Yeah. But it's been a fun ride, and this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I loved
Oh
your
my gosh.
questions, and yeah, it's fun talking with you, and congratulations on your book. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Thank you. I love being able to use my podcast to pick the brains of other people who are killing it in the same.
Oh, thank you. So you can find me. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok as @Ellie Hall Author. Also YouTube, so it's @Ellie Hall Author. My website is Ellie Hall or Ellie Hall Author. Both of those work. And
Wonderful.
yeah, I'm everywhere.
Thank you so much for all of this. And I'll make sure to put a link over to your Amazon page so that people can find all your books, plus your social media and all of those things. But this has been a wonderful conversation for me. And I wish you the best of luck as you continue.
Oh, well, thank you. And likewise, feeling is mutual.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
You don't have to give me your heart. You don't have to give it away. You don't got.
Thank you for joining us on the Publisher Podcast. We hope to see you back for the next episode. Great, huge thanks goes to Jasmine Commerce for the use of her song. You can find Jasmine on SoundCloud. Go check out all of her music. We'll see you next time.